What is disrespect? Respect can be contrasted with two forms of disrespect. Presumptive negligence, which is unintentional disrespect, as well as disturbed contempt or intentional disrespect. When we presume that something is currently what we previously perceived it to be, that is negligent and presumptive. We presume that it currently is what we previously perceived it to be, or what we've been told that it should be. So that's negligent, that's presumptive, naive even. We've been told it should be some way, and we presume that that's how it is. That's not respectful. That's even, you might even say neutral. Fine. In some cases, however, we've been programmed to relate to a certain thing as if it should be a specific way. And if our direct observations contrast with the programmed expectations, then panic may seem relevant. In distress, we may find some reality or idea so disturbing that we condemn it. In distress. And in a panic, we may hysterically ridicule those who present a particular idea that contrasts with whatever is most familiar or most favorable to us. So what is so disturbing about some ideas, at least to some people? Some people experience an intense terror of social punishment or shame. An intense terror of social punishment, shame. And so they condemn or ridicule certain things in order to display their loyalty to some idea of how they, as people, should be. When their observations do not fit their programmed expectations, they express disbelief. Disbelief is a type of confusion in which someone previously held expectations and presumptions that did not fit with their later experiences. Such confusion or disbelief is normal development, though relatively infrequent usually. Typically, when someone is surprised by something, that can lead to what? Increased alertness or curiosity. Something surprises them, they're increasingly alert or cautious or curious. However, when they specifically expected one thing, and then that doesn't happen and something else does happen and they're surprised by all that, then that's not the same thing as when expecting nothing. It's the violation of their expectations that causes some people shame or even panic. They may resist their observations and say things like, that, or he or she or it, is not how it should be. They had a pre-existing idea of how it should be. Then they see that it's not like that. So they may experience various intensities of shame and panic. They may experience various intensities of shame and even panic. Panic for what? To hide the shame. We'll get to that more later. So they may presume that until they directly observe some expectation to be false, that it was true. So they may want to blame someone for corrupting the thing that they presume to have always been how they presumed it to be, until they realize it was not currently like that. So they presume it was always the way they presumed it always was. Then they find out it currently isn't like that. And then they want to blame someone for changing it from how they presumed it used to be into how they now observe it to be. They may passionately wish to reform the thing to make it back how they presumed that it was, whether or not it ever was like that. They may passionately wish to reform it to make it how they presumed that it was before their observations, which contrasted with their ideals. They had some ideals, they had some presumptions, then they have some observations, and when those observations contrast with the ideals, they want to reform the thing to make it how they presumed that it previously was, even if it wasn't ever like that. So what's the background issue here? What's the point of shame, or how does that shame come about? Well, they were wrong about something. They were wrong about an ideal, or presumption. They were already confused about it long before they knew that they were confused. Then, when that became obvious to them that they were confused, that they weren't accurate, well, then they felt frightened or embarrassed by their own observations. They were frightened of social harassment and social ridicule and social punishment that their own observations were inaccurate. I'm sorry, not that their own observations were inaccurate. Their own observations contrasted with their presumptions, thus revealing that their prior presumptions or expectations were inaccurate. To hide their shame and anxiety, they may panic and throw a tantrum of condemnation and blame and shaming and ridiculing and lots of very two-year-old tantrumy kind of things that are hilarious, except when you're in the middle of them yourself and experiencing them. But they literally can be quite hilarious to watch from the outside. So one response to confusion, besides panicking, is to seek clarity. Instead of hiding the confusion and blaming someone for it, just seek clarity. You can actually blame someone for causing confusion and then also seek clarity. Another response to confusion is to withdraw focus from whatever had been confusing for someone and then seek to blame someone else for their shameful experience of confusion. Again, confusion doesn't have to be shameful, but for some people, they may be ashamed of confusion, so they want to blame somebody for being the cause of their confusion. Someone else must have been naive or insincere. Someone should have properly informed them or corrected them. Further, people in a panic may distract themselves from the observations which triggered shame and panic by targeting their focus on specific other people who are to blame for their confusion. So there's like the general issue of someone must be to blame, and then specifically, let's find someone in particular, a particular group or individual to blame. So again, it's not just that someone, some unspecified person, should have rescued them from shame or confusion or prevented the experience of shame. Typically, specific villains, specific traitors are proposed. If it was not for the negligence or even misconduct of those specific others, then, according to the common distressed accusations, there would have been little or no confusion, which is, again, something that many people would consider shameful, that they are confused in a particular case or in general or whatever. So all of those accusations as far as who is to blame and who is the cause for confusion, that may be true. Maybe increased caution is relevant in regard to those specific other people or in regard to people in general, like not to just take what people seem to sincerely present as being accurate. We can distinguish sincerity from accuracy. We can also recognize that in some cases people may intentionally deceive other people. Maybe eruptions of blame and ridicule can be useful and valuable and relevant. Why? Because those behaviors might repulse most people. They certainly draw attention to oneself to passionately make condemnations and accusations and issue ridicules. They draw attention and they also can repulse certain other people or many other people. So that could be favorable, at least temporarily. However, all of that is focusing on other people and prior expectations about them, not the observation that contrasted with presumptions. So the basic thing is there was presumption and then an observation that contrasted with it. That's really the core issue. What do you want to do? Well, you might want to clarify what's being observed and then match your presumptions or expectations to actual direct observations. So beyond the issue of placing blame for the gap between observations and presumptions, there is respecting a particular reality, correcting any confusions about that reality, and updating any presumptions or expectations to conform to observations. We can respect our own observations, we can respect reality as we observe it to be, and we can respect presumptions and expectations, but only as presumptions and expectations. That's all they are. They're nothing more than presumptions. They are presumptive. They're not direct observations. So when shifting attention to our actual observations and respecting what we observe, that doesn't require condemning those observations or the experiences that the observations trigger in order to preserve some idea, some self-image. So we might want to preserve or promote an image of loyalty to some set of pre-existing presumptions. And if we want to preserve an image of loyalty to some set of pre-existing presumptions, we might condemn certain experiences or observations. We might or might not. We can respect the observations or not. We can respect the experiences or not. We can resist them. We can discount them based on favoring inaccurate presumptions that we previously held, and now we know that those presumptions are inaccurate. We can still discount experiences and observations. We can condemn them. We can ridicule them. We can resist them. We can dismiss them, deny them, or we can respect them. So we can respect the issue of confusion as a possible experience too. Should people never be confused? That is an idea that may be popular or maybe comfortable or reassuring or a relief to think that, people should never be confused. But that idea is obviously in stark contrast with reality. Sometimes people are confused. People sometimes confuse one thing for something else. That can happen a little, it can happen a lot. It can happen in instances that have big consequences or small consequences, or no consequences apparently. If someone is ashamed of the idea that they might be confused, then we could expect them to resist that idea intensely. They may be very slow to admit to an instance of confusion. They may be very fast to distract from their confusion by making accusations and casting blame and changing the subject, and any number of things that basically distract from their confusion. For some people, the idea that they are confused about anything at all may be intensely shameful. For even one instance of confusion implies the possibility that there could be others. There could be more. What if several presumptions and expectations are in total conflict with actual observable reality? Well, then there'd be a lot of things to update and refine and bring into conformity with reality and observations, right? Or a lot of reasons to be ashamed and distract and throw tantrums and hysterias and so on. What if someone's entire program for avoiding reality is vulnerable to being exposed as a program for avoiding reality? Well, that gets into the next section.